Here's a glance at sports on TV, including channels, radio listings and game times for local games and national sporting events for January 14 to 20, 2019. Frequent TV channel numbers are listed at the bottom of the page. Schedule subject to change and/or blackouts, all time specific. Monday, January 14, NBA 5:30 p.m. NBATV Charlotte at San Antonio 7 p.m. NBCSNW Portland at Sacramento's KPOJ 620, KKRZ 102.3, NHL 4:30 p.m. NBCSN Montreal at Boston Soccer noon. NBCSN Premier League Manchester City vs Wolverhampton tennis 6 p.m. ESPN2 Australian Open midnight. ESPN2 Australian Open college basketball 3:30 p.m. FS1 Nebraska at Indiana 4 p.m. CBSSN Holy Cross at Bucknell. ESPN Syracuse at Duke KXTG 750 102.9. ESPNU Florida State at Pittsburgh 5:30 p.m. FS1 Wisconsin at Maryland 6 p.m. ESPN Texas at Kansas. ESPNU Baylor at Oklahoma State women's college basketball 4 p.m. BTN Michigan State at Ohio State. ESPN2 Iowa at Minnesota. SEC Mississippi State at Auburn golf 11 a.m. Golfweb.com Tour the Bahamas Great Exuma Classic Luge 8 p.m. NBCSN Phil World Cup horse racing noon. Portland Meadows live racing Tuesday, January 15th. NBA 4 p.m. NBATV Minnesota at Philadelphia 7:30 p.m. NBATV Chicago at LA Lakers NHL 5 p.m. NBCSN Los Angeles at Minnesota tennis 6 p.m. ESPN2 Australian Open midnight. ESPN2 Australian Open college basketball 3:30 p.m. FS1 Seton Hall at Providence 4 p.m. BTN Rutgers at Purdue. CBSSN Southern Illinois at Illinois State. ESPN Kentucky at Georgia. ESPN2 Arkansas at Tennessee. ESPN EWS South Florida at Cincinnati. ESPNU West Virginia at TCU. SEC Florida at Mississippi State 5:30 p.m. FS1 Marquette at Georgetown 6 p.m. CBSSN Nevada at Boise State. ESPN Notre Dame at North Carolina. ESPNU Davidson at St. Joseph's. SEC LSU at Mississippi 8 p.m. CBSSN New Mexico at San Diego State golf 11 a.m. Golfweb.com Tour the Bahamas Great Exuma Classic 7:30 p.m. Golf European Tour Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship skiing 8:30 p.m. NBCSN FIS Alpine World Cup horse racing noon. Portland Meadows live racing Wednesday, January 16th. NBA 5 p.m. ESPN Toronto at Boston KMTT 910 7 p.m. NBCSNW Cleveland at Portland KPOJ 620 KKRZ 102.3 7:30 p.m. ESPN New Orleans at Golden State NHL 4:30 p.m. NBCSN Boston at Philadelphia 7 p.m. NBCSN San Jose at Arizona Soccer 9:30 a.m. ESPN2 Italian Super Cup Juventus vs AC Milan tennis 6 p.m. ESPN2 Australian Open midnight. ESPN2 Australian Open college basketball 3 p.m. CBSSN St. Bonaventure at Rhode Island 3:30 p.m. FS1 Creighton at St. John's 4 p.m. Root Boston College at Louisville. BTN Iowa at Penn State. ESPN2 Kansas State at Oklahoma. ESPN EWS Connecticut at Tulsa. ESPNU Auburn at Texas A. CBSSN Dayton at VCU 5:30 p.m. FS1 Butler at DePaul 6 p.m. Root Georgia Tech at Clemson. BTN Minnesota at Illinois. ESPN EWS Houston at SMU. ESPNU Iowa State at Texas Tech. SEC Alabama at Missouri 7 p.m. CBSSN Central Florida at Wichita State 8 p.m. ESPNU, UNLV at Air Force Women's College Basketball 9 a.m. NBCSN, George Mason at Massachusetts Golf 3 a.m. Golf, European Tour, Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship 10:30 a.m. Golfweb.com Tour, The Bahamas Great Exuma Classic 5 p.m. Golf, Asian Tour, Singapore Open 11 p.m. Golf, European Tour, Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship, Thursday, January 17, NBA noon NBATV, New York vs. Washington 4 p.m. TNT, Philadelphia at Indiana, 6:30 p.m. TNT, LA Lakers at Oklahoma City NHL 4 p.m. NBCSN, Chicago at NY Rangers Tennis 8 p.m. ESPN2, Australian Open Midnight ESPN2, Australian Open College Basketball 4 p.m. ESPNU, Tennessee State at Tennessee Tech 5 p.m. FS1, Michigan State at Nebraska 5:30 p.m. Portland State at Southern Utah 6 p.m. Route, Loyola Marymount at Gonzaga ESPN, Oregon at Arizona, KFXX 1080, ESPN2, Stanford at Washington ESPNU, Gardner-Webb at Radford 7 p.m. Pac-12, California at Washington State FS1, Oregon State at Arizona State, KEX 1190, San Diego at Portland, KMTT 910, 8 p.m. Route, Santa Clara at St. Mary's ESPNU, BYU at Pepperdine Women's College Basketball noon Portland at San Diego 3 p.m. BTN, Maryland at Michigan State 4 p.m. Route, Wake Forest at North Carolina ESPN, South Carolina at Mississippi State SEC, Georgia at Missouri 5 p.m. BTN, Michigan at Iowa 6 p.m. SEC, Tennessee at Alabama 7 p.m. Southern Utah at Portland State Golf 9 a.m. Golf, LPGA Tour, Tournament of Champions noon ESPN2, Latin America Amateur Championship Golf, PGA Tour, Desert Classic 4 p.m. Golf, Champions Tour, Mitsubishi Electric Championship 7 p.m. Golf, Asian Tour, Singapore Open Midnight Golf, European Tour, Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship, Friday, January 18, NBA 5 p.m. ESPN, San Antonio at Minnesota 7:30 p.m. ESPN, Golden State at LA Clippers NBCSNW, New Orleans at Portland, KPOJ, 620, KKRZ, 102.3, Soccer 11:30 a.m. FS1, Bundesliga, Hoffenheim vs. Bayern Munich Tennis 6 p.m. ESPN2, Australian Open Midnight ESPN2, Australian Open College Basketball 3:30 p.m. FS1, Maryland at Ohio State 4 p.m. BTN, Northwestern at Rutgers CBSSN, Ohio at Toledo ESPN2, St. Joseph's at St. Louis ESPNU, Eastern Michigan at Buffalo 5:30 p.m. FS1, Xavier at Villanova Women's College Basketball 6 p.m. Pac-12, Arizona State at Oregon 7 p.m. Arizona at Oregon State College Hockey 6 p.m. ESPNU, Notre Dame at Wisconsin College Gymnastics 3 p.m. SEC, Arkansas at Kentucky 4:30 p.m. SEC, Alabama at Georgia 6 p.m. SEC, Florida at LSU College Wrestling 6 p.m. BTN, Rutgers vs. Iowa Golf 9 a.m. Golf, LPGA Tour, Tournament of Champions noon ESPN2, Latin America Amateur Championship Golf, PGA Tour, Desert Classic 4 p.m. Golf, Champions Tour, Mitsubishi Electric Championship 10:30 p.m. Golf, Asian Tour, Singapore Open Skiing 3 p.m. NBCSN, FIS Alpine World Cup Biathlon 4:30 p.m. NBCSN, IBU World Cup, Saturday, January 19, NBA 12:30 p.m. ABC, Oklahoma City at Philadelphia 5:30 p.m. ABC, LA Lakers at Houston NHL 4 p.m. NHLN, NY Rangers at Boston WHL 5 p.m. Everett at Portland Soccer 4:30 a.m. NBCSN, Premier League, Wolverhampton vs. Leicester 6:30 a.m. FS1, Bundesliga, Bayer Leverkusen vs. Mönchengladbach. FS2, Bundesliga, Freiburg vs. Frankfurt 7 a.m. NBCSN Premier League, Manchester United vs. Brighton. CNBC Premier League, TBD 9:30 a.m. NBC Premier League, Arsenal vs Chelsea. FS1 Bundesliga, Leipzig vs Borussia Dortmund. Tennis 6 p.m. ESPN2, Australian Open midnight. ESPN, Australian Open college basketball 9 a.m. CBS, Florida at Georgia. ESPN, TBD ESPN2, TBD ESPNU, Tulsa at Central Florida 9:30 a.m. NBCSN, Richmond at Davidson 10 a.m. SEC, Arkansas at Mississippi 11 a.m. Root, Pittsburgh at Syracuse. CBS, Cincinnati at Wichita State. ESPN, TBD ESPN2, TBD ESPNU, Loyola Chicago at Indiana State. Fox, Indiana at Purdue. Kansas at West Virginia, KXTG, 750, 102.9, 11:30 a.m. CBSSN, Navy at Army. NBCSN, Rhode Island at LaSalle noon. Pac-12, Stanford at Washington State 12:30 p.m. SEC, Missouri at Texas A. CBS, UCLA at USC. ESPN, Kentucky at Auburn. ESPN2, TCU at Kansas State. ESPNU, SMU at Memphis. Portland State at Northern Arizona 1:30 p.m. Fox, St. John's at Butler. NBCSN, Dayton at St. Bonaventure 2 p.m. Pac-12, California at Washington. CBSSN, Pennsylvania at Temple 2:30 p.m. Root, Fresno State at Boise State 3 p.m. ESPN, Virginia at Duke. ESPN2, Texas Tech at Baylor. ESPNU, Oklahoma State at Iowa State. SEC, South Carolina at LSU 3:30 p.m. NBCSN, Massachusetts at VCU 4 p.m. Pac-12, Oregon State at Arizona, KEX 1190, 4:30 p.m. Root, San Jose State at UNLV. CBSSN, Tulane at Connecticut 5 p.m. ESPNU, Houston at South Florida. FS1, DePaul at Seton Hall 5:30 p.m. BTN, Penn State at Minnesota. SEC, Mississippi State at Vanderbilt 6:30 p.m. Pac-12, Oregon at Arizona State, KFXX 1080, 7 p.m. Root, Gonzaga at Portland, KMTT 910. ESPNU, Air Force at Nevada Women's College Basketball 9 a.m. CBSSN, Navy at Army 1 p.m. Portland at BYU 2 p.m. Northern Arizona at Portland State College Football 2 p.m. FS1, NFLPA Collegiate Bowl College Gymnastics 12:30 p.m. BTN, Ohio State vs. Penn State College Hockey 2:30 p.m. BTN, Minnesota at Michigan State 4:15 p.m. BTN, Western Michigan at St. Cloud State Women's College Hockey 2 p.m. FS2, Ohio State at Minnesota Duluth Golf, 12:30 a.m. Golf, European Tour, Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship 11 a.m. Golf, LPGA Tour, Tournament of Champions, noon. Golf, PGA Tour, Desert Classic. NBC, LPGA Tour, Tournament of Champions 4 p.m. Golf, Champions Tour, Mitsubishi Electric Championship 10:30 p.m. Golf, Asian Tour, Singapore Open Skiing 2 p.m. NBCSN, USSA Freestyle Cup Mixed Martial Arts 5 p.m. ESPN, UFC Fight Night, Prelims, Sunday, January 20th. NFL Playoffs 12:05 p.m. Fox, NFC Championship, LA Rams at New Orleans, KXTG, 750, 102.9, 3:40 p.m. CBS, AFC Championship, New England at Kansas City, KXTG, 750, 102.9, NHL 4 p.m. NHLN, Arizona at Toronto WHL 5 p.m. Tri-City at Portland Soccer 5:30 a.m. NBCSN, Premier League, Huddersfield vs Manchester City 6:30 a.m. FS1, Bundesliga, Nuremberg vs Hertha Berlin 8 a.m. NBCSN, Premier League, Fulham vs Tottenham 9 a.m. FS2, Bundesliga, Wolfsburg vs Schalke. Tennis 6 p.m. ESPN2, Australian Open midnight. ESPN2, Australian Open college basketball 9 a.m. CBSSN, Providence at Marquette ESPNU, Florida State at Boston College 10 a.m. BTN, Illinois at Iowa noon. BTN, Ohio State at Michigan 1 p.m. ESPNU, Bradley at Southern Illinois. NBCSN, Duquesne at George Washington 3 p.m. ESPNU, Colorado at Utah Women's College Basketball 9:30 a.m. Root, Virginia Tech at NC State 11 a.m. CBSSN, Fordham at Dayton ESPN2, Penn State at Maryland ESPN2, Houston at Wichita State SEC, LSU at Alabama 11:30 a.m. Root, North Carolina at Miami noon. Pac-12, Arizona at Oregon FS1, Butler at Creighton 1 p.m. CBSSN, LaSalle at St. Joseph's ESPN2, Texas A. Pac-12, Arizona State at Oregon State FS1, West Virginia at Baylor 3 p.m. ESPN2, Minnesota at Nebraska ESPNU, Colorado at Utah College Hockey 2 p.m. BTN, Minnesota at Michigan State 4:30 p.m. BTN, Notre Dame at Wisconsin College Gymnastics 3 p.m. SEC, Arkansas vs. Kentucky 4:30 p.m. SEC, Alabama vs. Georgia 6 p.m. SEC, Florida vs. LSU Golf 8 a.m. ESPN2, Latin America Amateur Championship 9 a.m. GolfWeb.com Tour, the Bahamas Great Abaco Classic 11 a.m. Golf LPGA Tour, Tournament of Champions, noon. NBC, LPGA Tour, Tournament of Champions Golf PGA Tour, Desert Classic NBA G League noon. NBATV, Santa Cruz vs. Oklahoma City High School Basketball 4:30 p.m. ESPN, IMG Academy, Florida, at Oak Hill Academy, Virginia, Rugby 11 a.m. NBCSN, Heineken Cup Wasps vs. Leinster Skiing 2 p.m. NBC, USSA Freestyle Cup 3 p.m. NBCSN, FIS Ski Jumping World Cup 5 p.m. NBCSN, FIS Alpine World Cup Biathlon 3 p.m. NBCSN, IBU World Cup Bobsledding, Skeleton 7 p.m. NBCSN, IBSF World Cup Horse Racing noon. Portland Meadows, Live Racing, frequent channel numbers ABC, Comcast 2, DirecTV 2, CBS, Comcast 6, DirecTV 6, NBC, Comcast 8, DirecTV 8, Fox, Comcast 12, DirecTV 12, NBCSN, Comcast 32, DirecTV 220, Golf, Comcast 33, DirecTV 218, Root, Comcast 34, DirecTV 687, ESPN, Comcast 35, DirecTV 206, ESPN2, Comcast 36, DirecTV 209, NBCSNW, Comcast 37, NAA on DirecTV, TNT, Comcast 54, DirecTV 245, TBS, Comcast 55, DirecTV 247, NFLN, Comcast 417, DirecTV 212, ESPN EWS, Comcast 402, DirecTV 207, BTN, Comcast 403, DirecTV 610, FS1, Comcast 408, DirecTV 219, Tennis, Comcast 410, DirecTV 207, ESPNU, Comcast 411, DirecTV 208, CBSSN, Comcast 412, DirecTV 221, FS2, Comcast 414, DirecTV 618, NBATV, Comcast 416, 439, DirecTV 216, NHLN, Comcast 418, DirecTV 215, MLBN, Comcast 419, DirecTV 213, Pac-12, Comcast 420, 421st, NAA on DirecTV, SEC, Comcast 425, DirecTV 611.